Hey, Dave LaCalle with Head Games Motorworks. Welcome to another teardown video. Today we got Matt Bystrack's 800 horsepower 2JZ. Now this thing came back for another round of just maintaining it after a season of hard driving, drifting, banging off the rev limiter. Now, thankfully, Matt is very into doing some maintenance on his off season, so the thing just doesn't come apart. It comes apart for good reason. It comes apart to check it all out, and that way we can make adjustments for the following season. Now, if you follow us at all, you'll notice that we already had a video of this, and we did a teardown after his first year of using a Head Games head, and we had to make some adjustments. We'll put a link in here somewhere around here, so you can check that out and see that we really needed to like shim the spring up, and we wanted to find out if those things actually worked. Well, I think it did, but let's go here and let's look at what we have. So when the oil comes from the outside of the engine, this is why there's so much of it, because again, if you were to have oil coming from the guide or from the valve seal, it just wouldn't be this much. It's a lot of oil. So it would come into it's coming into the combustion chamber. It's pretty heavy, and it's going out the exhaust port. Issue here is for the tuner, and Cleo's a bad dude, but oil does not detonate. So you can put a lot of timing into it, and it's a good chance that he could blow it up, but it didn't blow up because he's a badass tuner. It's from the outside because there's zero chance that oil is going to fight the force of air coming through it, especially in a turbocharged engine, to come all the way up here. And oil all out the exhaust port. Obviously, where else would it go? I'm sure it coated everything, including the header. The cam journals look freaking awesome. Looks like this thing wasn't even ran, really. They all look polished and beautiful. And I mean, this is after a season, 10 months of racing on the rev limiter. The bucket holes too are just freaking perfect. A whole season. Everything looks freaking beautiful. Now you've seen that we had a billet camshaft, and you must be thinking these buckets must be wasted, but unfortunately for the internet and the keyboard commandos, look at this. GSC cams do not destroy buckets if set up correctly. Now we have the right valve spring. The bucket has normal wear, and these are a wearable item, so I don't want you to think that it's because of anything else, but I don't feel anything on here, so that's a good way to check them, is you take something sharp, not your finger, and you just run across here, and you feel for something or you hear something, but all these are freaking perfect. There's really nothing wrong with them. They have marks in them, but they turn. They do a lot of different things. So like, and it would be, I would say, understandable for them to have a little bit of float into the camshaft because of what is going on with Matt's driving, but they're fine. We're going to reuse them. Whenever you're inspecting the valve train of your cylinder head, always look to the backside of the titanium or steel, whatever it is, retainer, and you want to look for wear. So you can see these things now have 2 seasons on them, and they look freaking beautiful. There's really no wear at all. Totally ready to go back into the cylinder head, and the locks too. So now on the last one, we had to replace the locks because, let me see if I can put that down there, you can see them. So the last video, we had to replace the valve locks because there was so much valve float that it was beating the lock up, and you can see it on the back side of the lock. It was very silverish. Now, perfect. Because of that shim, now nothing is being bouncing around or doing anything crazy. Check out the intake valves. Valves always tell a story, right? Now, one story it's telling me is that we cured the valve float issue. On the last video, if you take a look at it, we had an issue where we were using the 5066 from GSC conical spring kit, and we had some valve float issues. So instead we just shimmed it up and we made it very tight to coil bind, and now the 45 looks great. But do you see all this? This is on like every intake valve, and it's on every intake valve. All these is oil deposits. Now all the oil, as I said, was coming from the intake port. You saw it on the, just when we were checking that out, and it's really thick on there. You can almost peel it off. It's so thick. The exhaust valve, not so bad. The exhaust valve, you can't really see much of the deposits on the backside, but where you can see it is on this side. So you look at the face, all the oil will be burning basically on the head of the valve. It does it on the intake valve too. Not so bad, but you can see all the oil deposits. These things are, it's nasty. So thankfully, so far, all the problems have nothing to do with the cylinder head. Lastly, we have the camshafts. Now you're thinking, holy crap, they have a billet cam. Everything must be destroyed, but as you can see, there's really nothing destroyed. The cam looks good. There is some marks here. You can see it looks like there was some scuffing. It did have an oiling issue, and that's pretty common for an oil issue to show up in the cam journal, but the lobe itself looks freaking amazing. There is no issues with lash. There's no issues with valve float. This thing came out perfect. This is 2 seasons on a GSC S1 at 800 horsepower, 8,000 RPM on the limiter, a lot. Now when I say set up correctly, I just wanted to give you an example. We clearance the head for the camshaft. You can see there's a clearance here, right behind the lobe. We actually machine that into the head because you see there's clearance. On the S2 there will not be that much clearance, and it gets very tight when it goes to the either side of the bucket. We suggest this especially with GE or VVTi heads because they're a lot tighter, and it's a casting, so it's not going to be consistent. So you'll see that some heads have like certain holes that just fail, and they fail because if you don't have the clearance and the head is a casting, so they're not really consistent. So you're going to have certain lobes that are going to be tighter to the head than others, and that's how failures happen. Because realistically, they don't hit. They're just so close to the head that they remove oil from the lobe, and then it strikes the bucket dry. So all those things you hear about the billet cams, don't believe them. We're showing you. All right, so although we didn't check the guides and other things that we would normally check during a second inspection, we checked a lot, showed you a lot, and as you can see, this thing's pretty much ready to just refresh the valve job. We're gonna clean it up some and put it right back together. There's really no need to move anything forward. I mean, this shows with a good combination, and you can beat the crap out of it for 10 months, a year, and sometimes years, and still get a lot of use out of your cylinder head and parts if it's installed correctly. That's it for me today. Please like and subscribe. Check out our other videos and comment below. Talk soon. Toodles.